A new Des Moines Register Mediacom Iowa poll shows Vice President Harris leading former President Donald Trump 47% to 44% among likely voters just days before a high-stakes election that appears deadlocked in key battleground states. Now, if you are a Republican going for Donald Trump, this is horrific because Iowa is a state that Donald Trump should win. He won it back in 2016 against Hillary Clinton, and he won it against Joe Biden. The last Democrat to win Iowa was Barack Obama back in 2008 and 2012 when he was running. Now, let's go ahead and scroll down a bit to look at the overall makeup. Now, of course, Harris, 47%, Donald Trump, 44%. Now, the 3% right here in the purple, RFK Jr. Now, it would be pretty funny that RFK spoils what should be a winnable state for Donald Trump, because RFK was running as an independent, but he tried to pull out to join the Trump team, but he couldn't do it in time. So RFK remains on the ballot. Now, it could be a spoiler. Let's go down a bit further here because the poll consisted of 808 likely Iowa voters, which include those who have already voted as well as those who say they definitely plan to vote. Was conducted by Selzer and Company from October 28 to October 31. It has a margin of error of plus or minus 3.4 percentage points. Now, when they look at these polls, they showed that women, particularly those who were older and politically independent, shifted to Kamala Harris, which makes sense because Republicans overplay their hand on getting rid of Roe v. Wade, and it has led to disastrous effects. We saw in 2022 when Republicans expected a red wave, they didn't get it. And I can imagine with especially women voters, they see that Donald Trump want to keep states split on abortion rights, and we've already seen what happened when you leave, abortion to the states' rights. It leads to horrendous results. Women have died over it. So it's no surprising that a lot of women are going to be shifting towards Kamala Harris. And as we go down here, it states age and gender are the two most dynamic factors that are explaining these numbers. Senior voters who are 65 and older favor Harris, but senior women support her more by the 2-to-1 margin, 63 to 28%. So she's absolutely steamrolling as expected. And senior men favor her, just not by big of margins, 47% to 45%. And now we can go ahead and go to the pollster here and their reputability. So here is the final Selzer poll findings. Back in 2022, you can look at it. They are Republican plus 12. Republicans won it by plus 12. Now, the biggest margin of error was the governor in 2018. They had Democrat plus 2. It was actually a Republican plus 3. So that's about a 5 percentage point margin of error. So if we take the 3.4 margin of error, it is going to be a very close, which means Kamala Harris could, in theory, still lose Iowa, but not as bad as everybody expected. But if she wins Iowa, it is a horrific sign for Trump and all of these Republicans. Now, to look at some other different polls here, we have Iowa. This is 538. Donald Trump is expected, according to 538, like I said, to win 94 times out of 100 compared to Kamala Harris 6 times out of 100. So I want to give you all the available information here. And if we go down here to some of the more polling data for Iowa, you have the Red Eagle team, which is a Republican-sponsored poll, so take that for what it's worth. Trump is up plus 8, plus 7. But as we go down here, you can see the Des Moines Register Mediacom one, where she's up plus 3. So we don't know what is going to happen, but it is a pretty good sign for Kamala Harris that one of the top pollsters, one of the most accurate ones, is showing in her favor. And Donald Trump has seen it, and he's very scared. And we know he's very scared because he's calling it suppression. Let's go ahead and look at this clip from Donald Trump.
He's right. Well, there's a lot of spirit here, And we even have the polls up, but I think it's much more than the polls. No, the polls, I'm telling you, you can make those suckers sing. You get the right pollster, you can do, and you really do inflict damage. You know, when you do like this person from Iowa. Today, the election essentially is really, we're talking Turkey, comes out with a poll different from every other poll because it wasn't even in question. It's really the opposite way. I'm way up. If you look at 3-4 months ago, Dan, I was losing states that now are walks. You know, they're now walks, and I think you're going to have that here. It's called suppression. They suppress, and it actually should be illegal because it's, in many ways, it's worse.
Yeah, so there you go. Donald Trump is crying about a poll, which is admittedly an outlier, but he's saying that it should be banned or barred. I don't know what he's talking about. He's just very nervous and scared. And to further illustrate the point that he is nervous and scared, you have Donald Trump coming out pre-election saying Fox News keeps putting on Democrat ads as part of their news program. Their soundbites are almost all of Harris and her Democrat friends, all of whom are on the shows. Fox News is not our friend, is crazy. Now, Donald Trump is saying this because what I imagine his strategy is, in case Donald Trump starts losing the election and he sees Fox News call states for Kamala Harris, he wants to have this as his backup because he knows he can prime his audience to believe almost anything at this point. So if you put this out there, he can just start attacking Fox News and his people will believe it just like that. They won't even think for a second. But let's go over here. He keeps on crying about how the legacy media is doing election interference by having 84% positive coverage of Kamala Harris versus 89% negative coverage of Donald Trump. I mean, even if that was the case, it would be kind of Donald Trump's fault. I mean, he is the guy that keeps talking about how immigrants are spoiling the blood of the nation. He is the guy that said he doesn't have a plan for health care. He only has concepts of a plan. He is the guy that doesn't know what tariffs are and has talked about just throwing, oh, yeah, we can do a 200%, 300%, 500% tariff. It doesn't matter. And he is also the guy recently that had a quote unquote comedian on his stage make a bunch of racist jokes that targeted Puerto Ricans, even though that Puerto Ricans are a large demographic for Donald Trump that he desperately needs to win in states like Pennsylvania. So yeah, you're going to have negative coverage when you talk about how you want to execute generals like Mark Milley. Yes, you're going to get negative coverage. But let's go ahead and return back to the polls here. Because if we look at the national poll here, Harris is up 48%, 1.2% to Donald Trump's 46.8%. Now, if we go back in the election cycle here of November 2nd, Biden was up 8.4%. So it is not a done deal. Harris can still lose the election. It's not going to be a landslide. It might be if Harris wins Iowa and that affects all of the other swing states, but you really can't depend on it. Now, let's go ahead and come back here to the real clear polling data. Now, I showed you this before in a previous video. Donald Trump was up +1. Then the following days, he went up +4. Now it is back to being tied again. So when we're looking at these polling data here, it is a tie. It is a wash. We go to the battleground states. Now, according to the RCP average, Donald Trump is up 0 + 9, almost a point. He is winning every battleground state according to RCP outside of Wisconsin, which Harris is up 0.4, and Michigan, which Harris is up +6 on. Now, if we take all of this information right here and we translate it to the Electoral College from the RCP polling data, in the Electoral College, Harris is at 251, and Trump and Vance are at 287. So they would win the election in this scenario. Now, will this happen? We don't know, because if we go back to the battleground states, most of these are I would say all of these are basically within the margin of error. So we can't really, the entire point is we can't really know before it happens, because we expect this to be a close race. Many people have said it. All the experts have said it for a very long time now, that this is not going to be a runaway race. Now, you think it would be, but in a world that made sense, people would see the type of stuff that Donald Trump is saying, and they would be completely turned off by it. They would run far, far away. But that is not the case. We don't live in that world. We live in the world that we live in, where Donald Trump can easily win the election. So, of course, you got to get out there and vote. I would say vote for Harris. Don't vote for Donald Trump. Surely not. But there is one day left, and we are under 24 hours for the election. So all we can really do is wait and see what happens.